California, so I hope the reception is okay. I wanted to thank you very much for being on this call. And let me just say a few words about some of the issues that I've been campaigning on that I think are of relevance to the African American community. Number one, I think if you go to my website, BernieSanders.com, you will see a very, very strong platform dealing with criminal justice reform. There is no debate, I think, that our criminal justice system is very broken. We've got more people in jail than any other country. 2.2 million people, disproportionately African American, Latino, Native American, and we are spending almost $80 billion a year to lock up fellow Americans. So that sounds to be pretty absurd. One of the reasons is that if you look at inner city communities all across this country, we're looking at youth unemployment of 30, 40, or 50%. And that is simply unacceptable. If elected president, I will be educating young people, not incarceration. I want our young people to be in school. I want them to be working at decent jobs, not to be rotting in jail cells. And I think if we do that, we can go a long way to lower the number of people who are entering jail. I think also we have to take a hard look at local police departments all across this country. I was a mayor for 8 years and I've worked with police. And most of the police are honest and hardworking people. But if a police officer breaks the law, that officer, like any other public official, has to be made accountable, and I will do that. If any person is killed while in police custody, that should, in my view, trigger off the immediate U.S. Department of Justice investigation. I think we should also be moving aggressively to demilitarize local police departments so that they don't look like occupying armies. Local police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. I think that we've got to end corporate ownership, private ownership of jails and detention centers. People should not be profiting off of the imprisonment of fellow Americans. I think we've got to create a culture among the police which says that using lethal force is the last response, not the first response. I think in criminal justice, we have to rethink the war on drugs. I've introduced legislation that would take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. Too many people's lives have been negatively impacted by marijuana arrests, and I think that's an issue we've got to deal with. I think in terms of economics, I can study my record and my agenda. I think it works better for the African American community than does with any other candidacy. We're talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour nationally. We're talking about creating millions of good-paying jobs, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. We are going to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation so that we can make public colleges and universities tuition-free. I believe the United States has got to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a right. And I believe we need changes in our trade policy so corporate America builds factories and manufacturing facilities in the United States and not in China. So those are some of the high points of our legislation, of our agenda. I'd be more than happy to take any questions that anyone has. Simone, if you want to facilitate that, that would be great.
No problem, sir. At this time, if you have a question, please 3 on your phone, and I will recognize you and make your line live. Again, the first question we are going to take from Mr. Mark T. Harris. Mr. Harris is with KDE 97.5 FM out of Sacramento. Mark, your line is live.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Senator Sanders. Thank you so much for allowing us to connect with you directly. We want to know a little bit more about your plans relative to reducing the high cost of college education. We know you have promoted free education. There's an article that was just published in the New York Times that says young women are prostituting themselves with sugar daddies to pay for, in large measure, college and graduate school degrees. That's abominable. And we wanted to know, sir, what you could do, what you could suggest to combat this problem outside of the things you've already recommended.
Well, thank you very much. And what is going on right now is a national disgrace. I mean, to hear that women are prostituting themselves to raise funds to go to college is beyond comprehension in the United States in the year 2016. Look, here's the point. 50 years ago, you had a high school degree. You were in pretty good shape. You go out, probably get a good job. The world has changed. Technology has changed. Education has changed. And we need to recognize that in a highly competitive global economy, we need to have the best educated workforce in the world. And what that means, to my mind, is this is not a radical idea. It is not a radical idea. It exists in Germany. It exists in Scandinavia. We have got to make public colleges and universities tuition free. And what that means is that kids today, I grew up in a family, my parents didn't go to college, so I want every kid in America to know that if he or she studies hard and does well in school, they will be able to get a college education. That is what we need. It's not just the young people. Technology changes in everybody's job. Everybody needs more training. And we pay for this with tax on Wall Street speculation. Everybody here remembers that 8 years ago, the Congress bailed out Wall Street after their illegal behavior helped to tremendous economy. Well, it's Wall Street crime to help the middle class. And we also deal in our legislation with high levels of student debt. We also have to make sure that historically black colleges and universities get the support they need. They have done an extraordinary job, a heroic job, in providing an education to a very, very significant number of young African Americans. So they need our support with increased funding. Also, clearly, we have public schools all over this country. Detroit, Michigan, right now, is on the verge, their public school system on the verge of physical collapse. We have got to change our national priorities, invest in education, and not invest in wars like the war in Iraq that we never should have gotten into. So those are some of my thoughts on the need to change national priorities and make sure that all of our kids get the education they need.
We will take our next question from Michael Pullman. Michael is with EURweb.com and the Fact Cultural Hub. Michael, your line is live.
Senator Sanders, thank you so much for making time for us, sir. With next week's major decision to be made by many in the African American community and so many people still undecided, I'm wondering if you can summarize why the black community in California and nationwide should support you instead of Hillary Clinton.
Good. Thank you for the question, Mike. Look, let me give you the simple and straightforward answer. If these were normal times, then I think would be okay to say let's support somebody who is an establishment candidate. Let's support establishment economics and establishment politics. I mean, don't disrespect the Hillary Clinton that I've known 25 years of respect. But she is an establishment She is an establishment politician, and I think we all know that. I think given the incredible level of income and wealth inequality, given the corrupt campaign finance system that is allowing billionaires to buy elections, given the fact that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, and it is much worse in the African American community, given the fact that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, largely African American, Latino, and Native American, I think it is time for real change. And I think the American people throughout this country are catching on that the establishment is not working for them. And I don't need to be too rhetorical here, but we do need a political revolution. We do need a government that starts representing all of us and not just the 1%. And we do need to say loudly that, we don't need wars in Iraq that Hillary Clinton supported, but we do need to invest in our inner cities where the schools are failing, where people don't have access to a grocery store or a bank branch, where they can't afford their housing. We need bold change in America. And I think if you followed my campaign, that's what my agenda is. It is taking on the billionaire class. It is taking on the greed of corporate America. It is taking on Wall Street. That's what I think has to be done now. And that is precisely why I am running for president of the United States.
Our next question comes from Stephanie Williams with BPC Communications out of Riverside, California. Stephanie, your line is live.
Thank you. Senator Sanders, thank you for sharing the burn with us this afternoon. We really appreciate your time. My question has to do with the criminal justice process in this country, particularly here in California. Being a blue state and a very bold blue state, it's interesting that we're one of the few states that has a Bill of Rights for police officers that gives them additional rights above and beyond the average citizen. In addition to that, there are also restrictions on public records whenever an officer is found to be guilty of some violation or abuse by the police department itself. That information is not accessible through a public records request. I'd like to know your thoughts about that and how you would work to change that if elected president.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm not 100% familiar with the rules that you have brought forth for policemen's Bill of Rights, but let me just say, a lot of what you have described does not seem right to me. There is enormous amount of mistrust, especially in African American and Latino communities, about the police. That's unfortunate. And I've mentioned to you some of what I think has to happen in terms of making police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they serve, demilitarizing police departments, doing an independent federal investigation if somebody is killed. But I think if our goal is to make police departments serve the people and not intimidate the people, they've got to be part of the community, and there has got to be a heck of a lot more trust than there is today. And I don't think police officers who are engaged in wrongdoing should be able to hide behind a closed door what they have done. I think the public has a right to know. So I can't give you, a not being familiar with the issue, the California rules that you have mentioned. It sounds to me like we need real changes in them. People have a right to know what is going on in their police department. If police officers are engaged in wrongdoing, the public has a right to know that.
Mr. Brown, your line is live.
Yes, thank you. Senator Sanders, how do you propose to turn the police abuse around, since most of the police don't live in the cities or communities that they police, and they are covered by the local elected officials?
Well, Harvey, I think we need kind of a revolution in law enforcement culture in America. And when I was mayor, I was mayor of Burlington, Vermont. There was a lot of discussion about the need for police officers, firemen, teachers, as a matter of fact, to be part of the community, to live in the community. A lot of debate about that. And I think it's a good idea, everything being equal, if the community can provide those people. Because you want them to live in the community, to know what's going on in the community, and take responsibility for their own communities. I like that idea. I also think that we should have police departments that look like the communities they're serving. I mean, it is not unrealistic or wrong to request or to make happen a police department that is African American or largely African American if they are serving in an African American community or a Latino community. You know, you should have people who are familiar with the folks in the neighborhoods. And I think just, Harvey, that there needs to be an effort to bring new people into police, into criminal justice, into law enforcement, who have maybe a little bit different attitude than some of the culture that we're seeing right now. And that means, for example, I'll just give you one example. We should understand that using lethal force should be the last response, not the first response. That takes a lot of training. Being a cop is a very, very difficult job. But we should applaud those police officers who can deal with difficult situations without using lethal force. They should be seen as doing a really good job, rather than somebody who uses the gun when perhaps he or she should not. And I also would tell you, Harvey, that I would hope that we would bring a whole lot of a new generation of police officers into law enforcement who have maybe a little bit different attitude than some of the older police officers.
Our next question will come from Regina Brown Wilson, who is the director of the California Black Media. Regina, your line is live.
Hi, thank you. So I'm going to smash in my two questions together. But one, I wanted to let you know that we have Evan here, who's the first intern who's graduating from C.K. McClatchy High School next week and attending Emerson College in Boston. She's going to be focusing on journalism and is going to be working with us. So she's a young person who we want to make sure is getting involved in the process, and she is going to have a question for you. And then I guess I will just follow up after her question if that's possible.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Sanders. My question is, typically young voters have a low voter turnout. One reason is due to students transition to college and not being informed on how or where to vote while in college. What do you suggest to change this problem and just to increase young voter turnout in general? And also, since you have such a young demographic of followers, if you do lose the Democratic nomination, do you think this will discourage young voters from participating in politics again?
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for being a young person involved in the political process. Information. We have one of the lowest voter turnouts of any major country on earth. And that turnout is much lower for young people and for lower income people than it is for the general population. And our job is, and I've been working really hard on this in this campaign, is to involve young people in the political process, because they are the future of this country. And they must have a right to help shape the future. Decisions are being made today which impact your life. And you should have a say in what those decisions are. And I'll be honest with you and tell you that I think there's pretty much of a concerted effort in the corporate world trying to make young people not appreciate the importance of political involvement. And we've got to turn that around. And I think we do that. I have been just amazingly, just deeply impressed by the number of people who have gotten involved, young people who have gotten involved in our campaign, because I think we're talking about issues that are relevant to their lives. If you're a young person today, there is a likelihood that for the first time in the modern history of America, your generation will have a lower standard of living than your parents. And if you go to college, there's a real likelihood you're going to leave school $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 in debt, which is pretty crazy. So I hope that young people stand up and demand a say in the political process, fight for their rights. You should not have to be $70,000 in debt when you leave college. You should be able to go out and get a decent job. But that's not going to happen unless young people stand up and fight for those ideas. So that's kind of what I believe. And I think what we are seeing through development in politics that we have seen for a very long time. But thank you for being involved. But good luck to you on your internship.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. And so my last question will really just revolve around, you talked about trust. This is Regina again, but you talked about trust. And last year, California passed SB 277. It was a mandatory vaccine law eliminating personal belief exemption. And I know that there was one that was also passed in your home state. But I believe it opened a broad religious belief. It was brought to our attention that there was a CDC sitting scientist, Dr. William Thompson, who turned over documents to Congress, Congressman William Posey out of Florida, and we know that people are investigating the claims that he has made about falsifying data around the vaccine programs and African American boys. And so, as you know, the CDC, obviously anything linked to anything like that, there's already a distrust in our community. What are you doing maybe on that front? I know that you probably supported vaccines, and I believe obviously I do too, but what are you doing? Because this has been alarming, and it's been a cause for concern in the African American community. People have their antennas up, and they're still trying to learn about it, but there's been a silence in the media.
I have to apologize. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you said? There has been falsification of the vaccine.
Yes, and I'll make sure that I get it to your press secretary.
Okay.
But Morgan Camp, which is a very reputable whistleblower, law firm out of Cincinnati, Ohio, is representing a sitting scientist who has been praised and even given promotions at the CDC. And basically, he said he and his co-authors omitted data relating to African American males because they couldn't figure out how or why there were the numbers. They couldn't get the numbers to match up when it came to looking at race, autism, and age. And so while I'm a mother also of an African American male, and so it's been concerning even for myself to obviously proceed with caution, but I'm also in disbelief that no one has stepped to the plate and said this man must be subpoenaed to testify before Congress. And so if you are president, what would you do to make steps in that direction to make sure that any wrongs are made right and to rebuild that trust back into the community? Even if you're not elected president or not granted the nominee, what can you do in your position when you go back home to ensure that this man is able to testify so we can learn what he knows?
Well, I'm a member of the Health Education Labor Committee, which deals with issues like that. And if you can send me the information, I would be very happy to look into it. Probably not right this moment, because I'm in the middle of a campaign. But I would be very happy to look into that and see what's going on.
Thank you, sir. I think we'll now have final comments from you.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody who has been on this call. I hope you can all hear me. We're just zipping through California in a car. That's not a great way to have a conversation. But let me just conclude by suggesting to you that I think the times we are living in are very, very difficult times, and that deals with a corrupt campaign finance system, which allows billionaires to buy elections, and that is very, very dangerous for the future of American democracy, and that's an issue we've got to deal with. You have a rigged economy where most people are working longer hours to low wages. Almost all new income is going to the 1%. We got to deal with that. We have a broken criminal justice system, and we talked a little bit about that. But we cannot continue to accept the fact that more people in the United States are in jail than in any other country. We got an educational system in which so many of our bright young people cannot afford to go to college or are leaving deeply in debt. We have to worry about climate change and the future of this planet. We have to make sure that we don't continue to get involved in wars that we should not be involved in. So we got some really big issues out there, and I would just suggest to you that in my view it is a little bit too late for establishment politics and establishment economics. And I would hope that if you have any questions, go to my website, berniesanders.com. We have some really detailed information about all of the programs and the ideas that we're supporting. So, Simone, thank you for helping to coordinate this, and let me thank everybody who has been on the phone and keep up the great work. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.